That's the agenda, and I want to start with uh, Holocaust Remembrance Day, or Holocaust Memorial Day, or in Hebrew Yom HaShoah. Actually, the word Shoah or the word Holocaust. Anyone knows where the word Holocaust comes from?
I do.
Very good, Betsy. Okay, so do you? I think we've talked about it in the past.
I think we have, and it was the whole burnt offering, correct?
Right, that is correct. Very good. Your Greek is wonderful. You remember the Septuagint so well. Right, very good. So essentially, people don't know that. People in Israel don't know that. Many people know that the word Holocaust in English means the Holocaust, the Shoah, but almost nobody knows that it goes back to a whole burnt offering. In the Greek, by the way, it's not if you think for a second, I always say that native English speakers do have such an advantage because many words in English are based on the Greek. Caust, okay? Caustic, like caustic, when you say about someone or a behavior that is caustic, that is the same caust of Holocaust. Okay? It's consuming, okay? So that's and Holocaust, the whole burnt offering. If you ever visited like a Roman bath, so they have the underfloor heating is called hypocaust. That's under heating or heating under the floor. Okay, you can see many of those wherever the Romans were, which is everywhere except America, roughly, but everywhere in the ancient world. So in Israel, you have many examples. In Europe, in certain parts of Asia, in North America, in North Africa, I mean. So basically, that's the word Holocaust. And in different countries have different dates for marking the remembrance of the Holocaust. Israel has the Holocaust Day on the 27th of Nisan. Okay, the Hebrew date is the 27th of Nisan, which is today. Okay, today is the you remember that in Judaism the day starts at the eve, and so tomorrow, starting already this evening, is the 27th day of Nisan. However, different countries have different dates. Many countries follow the 27th of January, which is the day when the concentration camp and of Auschwitz-Birkenau, concentration and somewhat also of a death camp and labor camp, was liberated, 27th of January. And if other countries also have slightly different times, like Poland has Holocaust Memorial Day on the 19th of April. And the reason I'm mentioning Poland in this context is because the 19th of April was the day when the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising started. Okay. By the way, Canada, okay, has the same Holocaust Memorial Day as Israel, the 27th of Nisan. So some countries, right, Canada and Israel, um, the in America they made it in a week into a week of remembrance, which starts in the Sunday preceding the 27th of Nisan. Every country has its own way. Israel has it on the 27th of Nisan, and we'll explain why. But I want to talk about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising today. And the reason I chose the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is because it is very, very symbolic in many aspects. Okay. There are many movies about it, many books. Um, Israelis that are taken to visit, they go to visit the sites of the Holocaust, many times are visiting Warsaw as well. I went to Warsaw when I was younger, okay, and to that region as well. Anyone went to Poland, guys, to see those places? John, you went. Terry, I see. So for instance, I did not pressure my son to go. It's a question. It's a question, but it's a whole big discussion. And it's not just a symbol of Jewish courage, which it is, but you'll see why I chose it. And I think some of the unique aspects of this are relevant for current events, obviously, and current issues in Israel. In order to understand the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, we have to have some historical background. I am by no means a Holocaust expert. All my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. It's part of the story. I like history. I read books. I saw movies and so forth. I'm not an authority on the matter. And if anyone knows something else or has heard different things, I'm I'm not an expert. But let's go through it together. So a little bit of a background. I'm not going to go through the uh, ascension of the Nazis to power. Not, but let's start when, um, let's say September 1st, 1939. Hitler invades Poland um, on September 1st, and quickly he overtakes Poland. Again, he quickly took over other countries as well. So while people talk about how Poland was not so successful in defending itself, other countries in Europe have not done much better. Okay, so let's keep that criticism in the right proportion. Actually, Warsaw took more time to take for the Nazis than Paris or other places. So that's uh, Warsaw, part of Poland, being taken by the Nazis. I'm not going to talk about the different areas and what happened to Poland, but essentially there was an agreement between the Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia, Ribbentrop-Molotov, to kind of divide Poland, and Poland was divided into different areas. In any case, we're talking about the city of Warsaw. A lot of Jews in Warsaw. How many Jews? Think um, around 30% during the war, even more, because Jews from the periphery of Warsaw were brought into Warsaw. We're talking about almost 40% of the people of the city were Jews. Okay, maybe before the war 30, and then between 35 and 40% of the city of Warsaw were Jews. Okay, there were much more Jews in Warsaw itself than in whole of North Africa. Okay, Egypt, Morocco, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, all of these countries together didn't have as many Jews as Warsaw. Okay, uh, I want to give you just it's popular vulgar etymology, but the name of Poland by the Jews was Polania, Polania, or Polin or Polania. They viewed it as kind of a homeland in a way that they kind of etymologically explained the word Polania, and I'll use the fact that you know Hebrew, many of you. Uh, po. Do you remember the Hebrew word po, guys?
Here.
Here, right. Lan, spend the night, lodged. Okay. And ya, Polania. Here, God lodged. Okay. Sleeps here. God resides here. They had, it's not that they were all religious. By this time, definitely not. They had communists, they had Zionists, they had anti-Zionists, they had all kinds of different ideologies, but they had many Jews in Warsaw. And the Warsaw Ghetto, which was a fairly small part of Warsaw. How small? Around 2.5% of the area of Warsaw was the Warsaw Ghetto, which was divided into two parts. But just so you understand, if you put 38% of the people of a city into an area of 2%, 2.4% of the city, you already get the picture of the density and the life conditions of the ghetto. So the ghetto was overcrowded, to say the least, inevitably unsanitary, and during war, people starved. Okay, I don't want to be too graphic, but you can watch videos, watch pictures yourself. Okay, it was still a ghetto, not a concentration camp. Okay, and the ghetto was the closed on November 12th, November 15th. November 12th is Yom Kippur, Yom HaKippurim, the holiest day of the year, and it took them 3 days to completely shut it, but they kind of officially shut it on Yom Kippur. Guys, the Nazis knew the Jewish calendar. They worked with it. They chose these dates. Okay, they chose these dates, and we'll see that during our kind of brief discussion of what happened in the Warsaw Ghetto, that dates were not chosen at random. Okay, so they chose Yom HaKippurim to be the day where they closed the ghetto. Here you can see the gate and the guards to the Warsaw Ghetto. There were two parts to the Warsaw Ghetto, and there was even kind of a bridge that connected these two parts. And you can see the wall was about 10 feet, 9.8 feet tall. Okay, the ghetto itself was 1.3 square miles, and at the peak, about 450,000 people resided in that area. Okay, that's very, very cramped. And it's not high rises. It's not high rising buildings. The buildings are regular buildings. Okay, and it was the largest of those Nazi ghettos during the Second World War and during the Holocaust. Okay, we're talking about the November of 1940. Okay, and occupied Poland, people are struggling with starvation. Okay, how many people reside in a room? Almost 10 people on average in a room. Okay, these, you take 40% of the city and you cram them into 2%, you understand how it looks. Okay, now the life in the ghetto were complicated and led to all kinds of dilemmas that I don't want to even kind of shock you, but you can think of these dilemmas of what do you do? Do you try to be as efficient and run the ghetto? Think about the Jews that are chosen to run the ghetto, because they choose the they make a committee that would run the ghetto, a committee of Jews, and they put Jews in charge of the ghetto. What do? Do you cooperate? To what extent? What choice do you have? What are the personal prices that you have to pay? Um, do you abuse your power? You could call it abuse, but do you use the power that you have from the Nazis in order to favor your family? Okay, what do you do when your second cousin needs help on the expense of other Jews in the ghetto? So all of these questions are dilemmas that are the everyday life of the ghetto and later on the camps. But it starts at the ghetto, and this question of cooperating becomes more and more evident, especially when the Gross Action starts, the great action, the great operation. Okay, the which is deporting the people from the ghetto to Treblinka. Treblinka was a death camp. You know, people always compare things to the Holocaust because they don't know what was the Holocaust. Okay, one of the unique uh, elements of the Holocaust was the industrialization of death in the Holocaust. Okay, um, the death camps. Okay, creating a manufacturing plant that manufactures death. This is something that you don't have in other atrocities and in other situations. Not that there are no other bad stories, okay, and not that there are no other atrocities or tragedies around the world. The world is full of tragedies, but there are some unique aspects of the Holocaust, one of which is this concept of death camps and manufacturing death. And the Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto were sent to the Treblinka death camp, which was about 80 kilometers from Warsaw. Okay, and the Nazis started this operation in Tisha B'Av. Okay, so as I said, the Nazis chose dates not at random. Okay, and from Tisha B'Av all the way again to Yom Kippurim. Okay, we're talking between the 23rd of July and the 21st of September. For 2 months, they sent people from the Warsaw Ghetto to Treblinka. Now, who was in charge of bringing? Remember, we're talking about almost 400,000 people, a little bit less by now. Every day, roughly 5,000 people were sent. 100 people, men, women, children, in a cart in every cart of the train, crammed in. Okay. The Judenrat, which is the Jews Council, okay, were in charge of doing it, and the police of the ghetto, which was Jews as well, were in charge of executing the operation in a sense of bringing the people. And it wasn't unique to the Warsaw Ghetto. This is something that has happened in other ghettos as well. What do? Do you cooperate with the Nazis? You don't know. You don't necessarily know what happens in Treblinka. You know, sometimes you get rumors. Do you choose to believe these rumors? Or do you choose to say, okay, we'll be as effective as possible in helping in doing it so we can keep the people, we can keep the work, because there are factories around the ghetto, and the Jews tell themselves, if we are part of the war effort of the Nazis would not shoot their own foot. Okay, they will not kill us, and they will let us stay alive and work in these factories. So do you cooperate? To what level of efficiency? Okay, and different heads of ghettos did different things. Okay, when Adam Chernyakov, okay, who was the head of the Judenrat in the Warsaw Ghetto, is ordered to execute these deportations, and he believes that he understands that Treblinka is Treblinka. He decides it cannot do that anymore, and he takes his own life. Okay. By the way, there was high rates of suicide among these leaders, understandably. Okay, and different leaders chose different paths. So Adam Chernyakov worked with the Nazis up until the point that he thought that he could not be, he could not be part of these deportations, and he killed himself. Okay, he was, by the way, a Senate member of Poland before the war. Okay, this is why he was appointed by the Nazis to lead the ghetto. Okay, they took like leaders from different parties of the Jewish people, and these were the leaders of the ghetto as well. Okay, now he tried his best. Okay, and when he realized what's happening, okay, and he realized that this is basically sending people to their own death, and they were demanded to bring every day 5,000, 6,000 people to be sent to the east. The Germans did not say explicitly, but he understood, okay, that this is what's going to happen, on July 23rd, he asks his secretary to bring him a glass of water. And when she leaves the office to get him a glass of water, he swallows a capsule of cyanide. Okay, and he kills himself. Okay, um, just so you understand this subject. Okay, a different head of ghetto, the head of ghetto lodge, Łódź in Polish, another big ghetto in Poland. Again, Poland was uh, a very, very, very Jewish state in a sense. It was a lot of Jews lived in Poland, and you know, when we talk about the Holocaust, even though my family does not come from Poland, Poland was like the heart of the story of the Holocaust is Poland in many senses, in many aspects. And the ghetto of Lodz was also very big, more than 200,000 people. And the approach of the head of the ghetto Lodz, Rumkowski, was that he is doing everything he can and keeping the ghetto very, very, very much in order to try and save the Jews and so forth. So he behaved like, and he was very criticized. He was he issued money for the ghetto with his own picture, okay, like the Queen of England, okay. So as I said, he was kind of the totalitarian like figure of the ghetto itself. It's and he said, I'm doing it in order to save as many people. Uh, Again, all of these things, all of these dilemmas are something that I hope nobody will ever have to have. Okay, and it didn't help him. By the way, he ended up dead as well. With the liquidation of Ghetto Łódź, he was sent to Auschwitz, and um, rumor has it that he was killed by the prisoners, the Jewish prisoners themselves. Okay, uh, different, but both of them ended up dead. You know, so that's a little bit about the position of leading the ghetto during the war. So the deportations, mass deportation, 5,000, 6,000 people every day over 60 days, almost 300,000 people are sent from Warsaw to Treblinka, including, okay, you might have heard the name Janusz Kolchak. Have you ever heard of Janusz Kolchak, guys? Or
Definitely.
definitely. And would you like to kind of share a little bit about Janusz
Yeah,
Kolchak?
he was a pedagogue. He was a teacher, and he had a children's home before the ghetto, and he in the ghetto itself, he organized kind of a children's home again. And the special thing about it is that his way of dealing with children was the main point was enabling them to make decisions. So, and he wrote a lot of books on how to raise children in that way, enabling them to assess a situation and to get along with each other, and some other specialties. And what is very special about him is that he was a very renowned person, very well known internationally, and a lot of petitions came about when they heard that he was locked up in the ghetto, trying to get him out, and he refused. He said, "I'm going with my children,"
Including to Treblinka.
Yeah.
Okay, when the orphanage was deported, he was offered not to go. He had a lot of Polish friends that were able to kind of smuggling out and so forth and so on. He said, "No, I'm staying with my kids."
Yeah.
Okay, so he was included in that deportation, and I'm still setting the background for the uprising. So by the end of this session of deportations, the people in the ghetto understood that there is no other option. It's not that if they behave or if they are good workers, they will be able to survive. And because of that, following these mass deportations to Treblinka, people became more and more decisive in their decision to at least fight to the extent that they could. Okay, and so following those deportations, more more and more people of the 50,000-60,000 people that remained in the ghetto decided that they're going to participate in whatever rebellion, if need be, tooth and nail fighting. And they did not think they're going to overpower the Nazis, by the way. They knew they're not going to overpower the Nazis, but they said that they are fighting for, the honor of the Jewish people. Okay? What is often mentioned in regards to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is that there were two groups of Jewish, there were two Jewish underground movements, resistance groups within the ghetto. The Jewish Combat Organization, Irgun Yehudi Lochem, oftentimes known by the acronym EYAL, and another one, Irgun Tzva'i Yehudi, often known by the acronym ATSI among Hebrew speakers, or a Jewish Military Union, Jewish Combat Organization. Don't ask me to open the Polish acronym. It's going to break my teeth if I try. But Żydowski, that would be the Jewish, okay? And they had a Polish, just so you understand the kind of world in which they lived, they had a Polish name, they had obviously Yiddish name, which was, all of these Jews spoke Yiddish and Polish, okay? Few of them knew Hebrew. So there were two different groups organized according to the political affiliation, okay? So the Jews could not put aside the internal political right-wing politics, left-wing politics, even at that time in the ghetto after the mass deportation. So they had two groups. If it reminds you of, if you read Josephus and the wars of the Jews against the Romans by Josephus, if it reminds you of, some would say, even current events to an extent, then you understand why I brought this and why I think it's also relevant today. So they had two groups. One of them was leftist, led by 24 years old Mordechai Nilevich. Again, if you visited Israel and if you visited the Gaza envelope, the towns around Gaza, one of those towns is called Yad Mordechai. The word Yad in Hebrew, which we know as a hand, is also a memorial. A memorial. When Absalom creates his own memorial, okay, it is said, Matziv lo Yad. The word Yad, which usually is a hand, right, is also a memorial. So that kibbutz in the Gaza envelope is Yad Mordechai, and there is a statue of Mordechai Nilevich, very famous. The less famous movement was the revisionist. I'm not getting into the whole history of the Zionist movement, but that's the right wing of the Zionist movement, led by Pavel Frankel. Even we don't have a picture of him. Even we do have some illustrations based on what people said. We don't know. We don't have a picture of him. So that's Pavel Frankel. In kind of last years, I would say last 20 years maybe, there is an attempt. Remember that up until 1977, the whole history of Israel was very, very univocal, in a sense, led by the Socialist Workers' Party that kind of founded Israel. In the last few decades, different voices and different angles are shown, and the place of the Jewish military union in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is getting also more recognition. And you have to understand that this, while as we said in the beginning, the Polish Holocaust Remembrance Day is April 19th, based on the date when the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising started, it really started already in January of 1943. We're talking about these, we've talked about the deportations of 1942, okay? July to September, October, this movement, the Ayal movement, which was the bigger of the two, less equipped, less trained, less armed, but bigger. Okay, the Atsi was smaller, but it was trained, better trained, better prepared, better armed. It was a group that understood the significance of resistance before the deportations. So, and it was able to kind of prepare its people before the deportation. So they were more experienced, more armed, more better organized, but they were smaller. And now in January of 1943, the Nazis started trying to deport the remaining people from the ghetto to Treblinka. And then what happened is that the people of the ghetto, okay, started surprise the Nazis with resistance, including killing some Germans, okay? And between January and April, the Germans were kind of, they did not try actively, they tried to liquidate the ghetto, to fight the ghetto in April. But between January and April, they kind of did not run the ghetto. And the traditional Judenrat Council was not able to run the ghetto, and the people of the Jewish Combat Organization and the Jewish Military Union ran the ghetto, especially the Jewish Combat Organization. By the way, collecting taxes, okay, trying to get ammunition. Not the members of the Polish resistance were not very keen on helping. Some of them helped. It's a big issue as well. I'm not getting into it. I'm not an expert on it, but there were different factions within the Polish resistance, and not all of them were big fans of Jews. Let's put it that way. Okay. So the during this period, the preparations for the resistance grew. Okay. The people, the bigger organization, the Ayal, refused to accept the Atsi as a group. They were willing to get them as individuals, but not as groups. They kind of, there was a lot of tension. Also, about questions of resources, okay, funds, ammunition, weapons, and so forth. They came to an agreement. They divided the parts of the ghetto, but they did not coordinate significantly between these two organizations, which is again a tragedy. I would say that people remember this. I should say that in other ghetto uprising, Jews were able to unite. So this division, because it's the biggest, because it's the main story, so people remember it. But in the other cases, Jews were able to work together under these circumstances. So the uprising itself, again, on April 19th, again, no coincidence, the eve of Pesach, the Seder night, okay, the eve of Passover. The Germans enter the ghetto for a final liquidation of the ghetto. Okay, and both organizations launch this military surprise attack to the extent that they were able. Okay, and they knew they're not going to succeed in defeating the German by stalling, yes. And obviously, if they would have done this when the ghetto was 350,000 people and not 50,000 people, it would have been even bigger. Okay, the Nazis would have had even more difficult time. Okay, so they held out nearly a month based on their preparations. They had bunkers, whatever they had underground, and on the 8th of May, the Germans discovered where the leaders of the Jewish Combat Organization were hiding in Mila 18th Street. That was where the dugouts of Mordechai Anilevich and the other leaders uh, of the Jewish Combat Organization. That was their command post, and they committed mass suicide again by ingesting cyanide. Okay, including Mordechai Anilevich, which we've mentioned. And on May 16th, the revolt, the uprising, was crushed. So this is a picture of the Nazis, and you can see on the background burnt buildings of the ghetto, the Warsaw Ghetto. Okay, so significance of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was the first large-scale symbol of Jewish bravery. They knew it was a tragedy in the sense that they knew they're gonna lose, but they fought for the dignity and the honor of the Jewish people, and they inspired others up until this very day. And 13,000 Jews were killed in the uprising. The ghetto was liquidated afterwards. There were, at the time of the uprising, there were about between 50 and 60,000 people in the ghetto. Some of the fighters were able to escape and join the partisans. By the way, some of them were killed by the partisans as well, because again, anti-Semitism was not limited to the Germans. There were many people who hated the Germans, but still hated Jews. Okay, and later on, people who survived, testified about the uprising, and even testified in the famous Eichmann trial in Israel. But that's not the point. Now, the Holocaust Remembrance Day, Yom HaShoah. So, yes, Susanna?
Before we move on to this section, at the first slide on the previous section you mentioned, or it says that the ghetto was demolished in 1940, but wasn't it really 1943?
No, not demolished on 1940.
Or stopped?
No. The ghetto was established on 1940. It was closed in the sense that it was, okay, yeah, it says closed. Now I see. Established on 1940. Maybe I used the word closed in the sense that, closed. Just a second. It was established in 1940 and closed here. The German closed the Warsaw Ghetto.
What did you mean by that?
They kind of did this. Okay.
Okay. In English, I take it as.
Yeah, you're right. The word closed. Yeah.
But you could use enclosed.
Yeah, enclosed. Right. Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Sorry.
Okay. No. Good question. Thank you. Yeah. So, thank you for helping me clarify that point, Jackie.
Yeah, I have a question about the date. Because if Yom HaShoah is on, because I'm confused about
I'm getting to that question exactly. Okay, because I said that it was 19th of April, and I said it was the eve of Passover. No, right, just a second. But Yom HaShoah in Israel is the 27th day of Nisan. So how did they get to that date in Israel if it's not the eve of Passover when the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising started? Okay, and it's not 19th of April. Why did they choose the 27th of Nisan, right? That's the question, Jackie?
No.
So go ahead.
The question is, I thought 27 Nisan is Friday.
Yeah, so they never do it on Friday because of the remembrance and so forth. So if it happens on such a date, they move it around a little bit. So you're right. The 27th of Nisan is the date, but they move it a little bit. The same as done with a Memorial Day and Independence Day, which are supposed to be on next Shabbat and Friday, but they moved to Wednesday and Thursday to
Okay.
prevent the desecration of the Shabbat.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Netanel, this is Jerome.
Yeah.
My question to you is that I'm interested in the word ghetto itself. When was it the first
It's an
ghetto?
Italian word. It's an
When was
Italian
it first
word.
established?
It's an Italian word, and it means a foundry. You know, I'm not Italian, but that's and the word comes from Italian, and the first place where they had a ghetto, okay, was an area that was a foundry, okay, and that's where the word ghetto comes from, if I remember correctly, okay. That's the term that was came from the Italian word for foundry, because in Venice, where they had the first ghetto, it was in a foundry or next to a foundry.
So what do you mean the first ghettos? Where they actually enclosed Jews to
In a kind of a separate closed neighborhood. So the term for an enclosed neighborhood of Jews became ghetto, and then obviously enclosed neighborhoods or areas of certain ethnic groups became later on like used in the same way. So you can see in America, people talk about ghetto, and they actually mean a neighborhood that was oftentimes mostly black people.
Thank you.
Barak,
Yes, Anne.
Nathaniel,
It
I
is,
have a question.
Just a second,
Wait, sorry.
John. Just a second. I'll take your question after Anne. Yeah, Anne.
Okay.
the term ghetto was indeed coined in Italy, and it comes from Venice. That's where it started, and it actually meant that was in the 16th century already, and it meant a closed quarter, living quarter.
Right, but I think
And-
originally it means a foundry, and because it was next to a foundry or in an area of a foundry. Okay.
Oh.
I'm not. I don't speak Italian, so I don't know if ghetto is actually a foundry in Italian, but this is what I remember. Yes, John.
Yes, Nathaniel, I wanted to ask, after the destruction of the ghetto, where did they take the Jews? Did they take them to the concentration camp, or were they taken?
Mainly the death camps. Yeah, the liquidation of ghettos meant that the people were sent to camps, concentration camps or death camps.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So now I want to kind of talk a little bit about Yom HaShoah, and as you can see, in why was the 27th of Nisan chosen? The 27th of Nisan is not the eve of Passover, where they wanted to create a connection between the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and the date that they would choose, because they wanted. Remember, Israel is a young country. The relationship between Israel and the Holocaust is not a simple relationship, because in Israel during the first half of the 20th century, and especially during the this time, okay, 1948, they are trying to create a different kind of a Jew. They say that the Israelis, it's sorry, you know, for using a little bit humor in such an evening, but they say the Israelis are like the Puerto Rican of the Jews, you know, in the sense that, you know, they're more rugged than the traditional Jewish person as it is perceived in the diaspora. They're more like manly. They're fighters. They are pioneers. They are farmers. They're working the ground. You understand that the traditional view of the Jew in Europe is different, and the Jews here in Israel are trying to create a different kind of a Jew, the new Jew. Okay, and so for them to look at the Holocaust and say, they looked at the Holocaust and they said, oh, these type of Jews. I'm kind of bringing you to a internal discussion, okay, a discussion that think about 80 years ago. The Jews of Israel, the new Israeli Jews, are looking at the Jews of the diaspora of Europe and say, oh, if we were there, we would have fought. We are, you know, fighters. And there is kind of a claim there is kind of a criticism of the Jews of Europe. Oh, you went like sheep to the slaughter. Okay? And so the relationship between the young state of Israel and the Holocaust, or the people of the young state of Israel, the ones that were here during, let's say, the first half of the 20th century, and the ones that were born here, and the people who came from the Holocaust, was somewhat tensed on this subject. And the Jews here tried to find a day that would commemorate the bravery. And so they chose a date that is affiliated with the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. However, this date, the 27th of Nisan, was a date that was chosen before the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Actually, before there wasn't even a ghetto in Warsaw. It was the date when the 1936 Great Arab Revolt started. The Jewish date of the 1936 Great Arab Revolt, 1936 to 1939, there was a very, very big revolt of the Arabs against the British and obviously trying to kill Jews. Okay, and the date on which it started is the 27th of Nisan, and the Jews commemorated that date starting in 1940 as kind of a memorial day for the fallen people of that, in the context of the Israeli Jewish Arab, I would say, a conflict. So they chose that date that already was commemorated by some to become the official Holocaust Remembrance Day, or Heroes and Martyrs Day. As you see this stamp that says Heroes and Martyrs Day. Okay, and you can see 6 candles and the yellow star of David. You can see this flame. Can you read what the flame says, guys, on the right hand side stamp?
Shema Yisrael.
Right, it says Shema Yisrael. You've got the Shin, the Mem, the Ain, then the Yod, the Sin, the Resh, the Aleph, and the Lamed. Shema Yisrael. So these are commemorating the Holocaust Day. So basically, they took a day of remembrance that already pre-existed, let's say, 1940, and they made it into the official Holocaust Remembrance Day, Yom HaShoah. It's the date is not so simple because traditionally you don't do these during the month of Nisan, which is considered to be kind of a month that you don't do said things, but this is how it happened, and this is the official day, and this has kind of combined the Jewish-Arab conflict of Israel with the remembrance of the Holocaust, with the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which happened during that period. As we said, it started with the eve of Passover. Obviously, you cannot do it. They wanted to do it on the eve of Passover, but you cannot do a Remembrance Day, kind of a sad day in the holy days. So they did it after Passover. Okay, and we always have a week between Holocaust Memorial Day and IDF Memorial Day, and everybody today, one of the most quoted short, I wouldn't say a poem, but a short poem that is quoted the most is, I will recite it and then translate, שני ימי זיכרון בהפרש של שבוע בדיוק, לטובת החישוב הכללי, כמה עולה לנו עם מדינה וכמה עולה לנו בלי. And let me translate, we have 2 memorial days exactly a week apart for the general calculation, how much it costs you when you have a country and how much without. Obviously it rhymes in Hebrew, and to put in proportions the losses that we feel, I lost my brother, in the IDF, but when you look at it, then you compare it to the Holocaust, you get the proportions that we hold. So that's Yom HaShoah, and any questions. I don't know that I would necessarily have an answer because I'm not an expert on the subject, but if you want to ask or express your opinion about this.
Yeah,
I'm more-
Netanyahu, I want to express my opinion
Go ahead.
because I think you're being a little unfair.
In what sense?
I will tell you. So I had a cousin, Frida Gavendo. Her job, most of the time, she was a secretary to Golda Meir, okay, in the histogram. And what she told me, and I only know her from what she told me. Number one, what they were upset about was they traveled through Europe in the 30s and told people to leave.
Yeah.
And people wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
It broke their hearts.
Yeah.
That people wouldn't leave. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, whatever you say about what Israelis thought, may have discussed, and I don't know a lot of Israelis except my cousin, their number one thing was to open up their hearts and bring as many of these people to Israel as they could.
No doubt.
And so, yeah, were there tensions? Look, if you have two Jews in a room, you're going to have tension.
Sure.
But the reality is, this was, they opened their hearts, they brought everyone in, took them a long time. It's very difficult to get them settled in real homes. They lived in tents. And it was very important and very loving and caring for each other. And we mustn't lose that when we discuss how different people disagree with each other.
Sure, no doubt. Even the numbers are crazy. Israel in few years, 5 years, received a number of immigrants that was 2 to 1. In between 1948 and 1953, the population of Israel tripled. So no doubt what you're saying is, and I don't think if it was even, I think it might be unprecedented, the amount of people that were received in Israel between 1948 and 1953, not just from Europe, also from North Africa and from Yemen and from all around the world. No doubt. I was just expressing a sentiment that existed. When my grandfather wrote his book, he said, listen, and it's here, and he wrote in the preface to the book, he said, listen, part of the reason I wrote the book, this is the book of my grandfather, who was participated in fighting the Nazis, both part of the Red Army and then in the partisans. And in his preface to the book, he says, I write this book, right. I'm reading from the third paragraph of his preface. Another factor that pressured me to tell my story is, after the war, they said that the Jews did not fight against the Germans. When I came to the land of Israel, when I came here, here also I heard that they say that the Jews went like sheep to the slaughterhouse. Against these opinions, I go out against these opinions, and I offer to the young generation to read the book so they could learn that many Jews did fight against the German, and many of them fell during fighting the Germans. So I'm not saying, and I even didn't get to the kind of numbers and so forth. And my grandfather made Aliyah in 1949, when exactly in the said period. I'm just saying that there was a sentiment like that in the Israeli public sphere. I'm not talking about the extent of it. I'm not saying, I did not name names, but it was an existing sentiment of the new Jew looking. By the way, Golda Meir also made Aliyah from the US. She was born in the US. I'm saying there was the sentiment of the people who were born in the 1920s in the kibbutzim and moshavim and so forth, who viewed themselves as a new version of the Jew, and I can understand that. And I'm saying, I even said, as I was talking about it, I'm bringing you into an internal discussion, but it's a discussion that existed in the 50s, right? I wasn't kind of misrepresenting the discussion, right? You were right. Everything you said is correct, but the discussion existed. Okay, Rosalind?
Okay. I just wanted
to have
make
a better
clear-
context. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So, especially with such a sensitive topic, Yes, Anne. And
No.
oh, yeah, okay. I saw you unmuted your microphone. I thought you.
Oh, sorry, I
No,
still
it's
have.
okay, guys.